Okay, Simon, you're a rural chaplain in Wales, which might be quite a new concept for some of us. Could you paint a picture for us of what a typical week looks like for you? What does rural chaplaincy involve on the ground?
Well, thanks for having me, guys. Very, very brave of Tim. He doesn't know what's coming next, and that's always a good thing. I feel I'm happy with that. He sent me a list of questions, and I've tried to ignore them as best I can because this is the sort of thing that's best served hot, isn't it? Tim, I think you're asking about rural chaplaincy and why we're doing it. Is that Are you happy with that?
Yep.
Okay, good. Yeah. Well, so we were planting churches in England and London, then housing estates, really, sort of
Mhm.
outside London, then inner urban area, Sikh, multi-ethnic, whatever. Um, and towards the end of that one, that's a great church now. They're doing really well without me, which is good. Uh, Better, I think. But towards the end of that time, God was sort of moving us on, and it was like, what are we going to do? There were two options. One was working with Tuareg people in a fairly close country. One was working in the Balkans, in a city where my second son now isn't doing a far better job than I would have done. I think of that. I was there 2 weeks ago, looking at various rural projects, meeting up with some non-Christian friends, meeting up with some Christian friends and stuff like that. So that was good. But neither of those two options for us came through, and we ended up coming back to rural Wales because I don't know if you realise, but what you've got in Wales, the picture is the southern coastal plain is the evangelical churches are standing on each other's toes. If you go to the northern coastal plain, there was a call to the north in the 70s and 80s. There are some lovely little churches up there that have come together, been sprung up. But in the middle, apart from like Aberystwyth or Newtown or Machynlleth now, which is fairly newish in these terms, there's not a lot. And so we're there. So we basically sold what we had in where we were living in Kent, and we came down here, bought some land. There was a shed on it. I could put the wife and four kids in there and join them every now and again. And that was, where we did what we did. We lived there for a bit, converted the barn on the land, and we came in the March, started the next September meeting. It's probably a bit swift, but it's nothing like enthusiasm, is there? So we did a bit of that, and we ended up with a church there. It went to about 30, 35, something like that on a Sunday in rented premises. People were traveling too far, so we then said, right, okay, back to your rural villages, guys. This is nonsense. We'll come and look after you in the week, but then go into your locality, see what you can find, and see what you can be doing in it. That went on for a while. We ended up learning we needed to have hubs for all of that, or it would all fall to the ground because these were micro churches, small. A few people leave or die or whatever, and they disappear. Um, and basically, we're in a situation now where we're doing much more of the sort of primary evangelism um, as a rural chaplain. And your question was, why are you doing rural chaplaincy? And the answer is because we came to a situation, everybody thinks Wales is spiritually rich because of the legacy of revival. Well, that was a long time ago. And there hasn't been much of that for a long time, right? And what you got left with very often was dead churches, Ichabod, the glory had departed. God had gone out the door because they'd abandoned scripture or because they'd been distracted into singing or whatever happened. And you end up with these institutions that are not in a relationship with the living God.
Mm.
So the ongoing work of the Holy Spirit and the enlightenment of the scriptures are not present. And you end up with a number of people in a box on a Sunday as unconverted, unregenerate, and not being sanctified sort of people. So it becomes a nasty place to go.
Mm.
So most of the farmers I meet with on a regular basis, they don't go to church because they've been. And I sympathize with that.
Mm.
Right? But still, if I come into that context and try to present Christ there and say, come to my church, they've all, certainly when we turned up, it was really strong and clear. They've all got a family allegiance. They've got an ancestral worship site. And if they go to another church that isn't their ancestral worship site, or to another minister who's not their ancestral worship site minister, they're betraying their ancestors. So what do? We said, okay, well, never mind. I'm coming as a chaplain. And by the way, we do church on a Sunday or whatever. Um, Chaplain's a box that people seem to identify as he's there to help us. You know, um, there's been a history of chaplains being wallies in wellies, frankly, but if you can break that mold with who you are, what you're about, your understanding of the industry, the culture, whatever, then there's stuff to be done.
Mm.
So yeah, I'm a rural chaplain, but basically pioneer church planting. That's the idea,
Hmm.
and that's what we set about doing. I'll probably spend 80 to 90% of my time with non-Christian people.
Mm.
And what I'm trying to do is pastor people who are not Christians yet, which is can be exciting, can be quite exciting.
Mm.
Um, but that's the job. We're trying to pastor them towards Christ. We're kind of disciple them to Christ before they realize what's happening in some cases, and that's the way we roll. Um, yeah. Do you want to ask another question about what I do in the week? Were you asking that?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. During the week, what does that look
Shall I
like?
read this out for you? uh, yeah, I mean, week goes something like this. I go into 3 livestock markets a week as our version of the agora where Paul went in, Athens or wherever he was, because that's where people were gathering. We go wherever rural people gather. So on a Monday afternoon, you'll find me in Sandalo Livestock Market, with people that come from a fairly wide geographical area, but it's a small local market. On a Wednesday morning, you'll find me in Llandovery Livestock Market, first of all, early doors, with a sheep market. And again, that's people from, again, a sort of another big sort of area, but to the north and east. And some from the Gower, getting quite a lot of Gower trade. And then on a Wednesday, later in the morning into the afternoon, and then again on a Friday at least, you'll see me in Carmarthen Livestock Market, which is the regional market. And through those 3 markets, we're contacting people in the rural community from all across the southern half of Wales. It's as simple as that. They go as far as Cardiff in the east. We go to St. David's, which is, out on the western flank. We go up as far as some people, not quite Aberystwyth, but, nearly as far as that. Then across. Huge geographical range. And basically, we're trying to do first contact evangelism in the
Mm.
livestock markets. So yeah. Now, on top of that, you've got your crises.
Mm.
So we talk about operating on the ground, so it's boots on the ground. People you see, they come and find me. They call me Rev. They have a banter, which is great. And they come and see me with problems there, or maybe there are people will give me a ring, or there'll be something I've got to go and. I'm saying to you just now, Tim, I've got to go and sort out some bereavement counselling for somebody shortly because there's been, a bit of that going on, not good. So we operate on the ground and then online because I meet people on the ground in the livestock market, have a really good conversation, might not see them for 6 months.
Mm.
Well, we've got to change a worldview. So that means much more contact than that. Drip, 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 drip. So you'll find me online, welshrev.com, or at welshrev on X, formerly Twitter, and various other places. So we're reaching, if you look at the numbers, we're reaching ridiculous numbers of people with Bible verse, short content stuff, sermon length content stuff. It's astonishing who comes back to you from that months on because something's stuck in their head.
Mm.
Unexpected people, usually.
Mm.
That's quite good.
Yeah.
So on the ground, online, on the road, responding the chaplaincy Land Rover, which has just failed its MOT this morning, and we get about. It's noticeable. We've now got an ex-mountain rescue Land Rover. It's a 130, if that means anything to you, and it should if you're in rural areas. A Land Rover, and it can double up as an ambulance and whatever. We use it in all sorts of ways like that. So yeah, we're trying to work with people's psychological needs, if you like, in
Mm-hmm.
terms of responding. And we've built that out into trying to meet people's physical needs. In terms, people were getting very anxious; they couldn't get an ambulance response time that would fit the bill for anything. So I've gone off and trained to be a responder. I'm a Frec 4, if that means anything to anybody. I can be the other guy in the ambulance, and we're doing a lot of training associated with that. So outside the normal run of a week, I will get call outs of various sorts. I might be doing some basic life support training in a village hall or in the front room of a farm somewhere with a few friends have come around of the farm family, stuff like that. So that we're trying to cover psychological needs, physical needs, and spiritual needs, which is really why we're here.
Mm.
We work with this slogan, strengthening farmers from the inside out. And you know what that means. But they think that's curious, sounds quite nice. What do we do about that? You see? So it's, yeah, just a bit of fishing.
Yeah, that's great. Great question here from Mike. Simon, thanks. What are your typical conversations you have with farmers? How do you move from farming conversations to explaining Jesus? I think that's a great getting down to the
Oh,
nuts and bolts question. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, this is the question. It's all about relationships, isn't it? And it's all about building the bridge. So we've got people operating with two separate horizons here. I'm a believer in Christ, right? That's the first thing I am. So I've got a view of the world, and I hope it's as close to a biblical view of the world as I can manage. It is very different from the view of the world of the guy I'm meeting with on a regular basis in a mart, or perhaps occasionally, you know, occasionally women. I mean, heavens, you know. Right. So, and they're scary. So you're trying to merge these worldviews. What's the point of contact? It's like Jesus at the well, isn't it? It's Jesus and the Samaritan woman type of stuff. Um, he rocks up and he's not what she's going to expect. And I rock up and not what's expected. And what you do, you're looking to break the assumptions, the preconceptions that people have about us, arising out of the chapel history and all the rest of it. Um, how do you do that? You just walk up and you open the conversation about the sheep you're looking at. So that pen's a bit hard, isn't it? You know, or you talk about the price. You've got to know the price. You've got to know the culture, the context, what's going on. So you're building a bridge across some sheep or some cattle or something like that, and you're being a friendly, approachable, talky person. You know, if you're not chatty, how do you get on as somebody trying to reach people for the Lord? Unless you're going to chat, you're not going to chat about the Lord, and it's simple as that. So you're looking for that point of contact, that bridging point. Just being cheerful, happy, cheering people up, helping people, having a bit of fun. We find so I came through the student setup. I came through UCCF and all that, and was involved in student outreach, and owe it a lot. Owe UCCF a lot, no doubt. They'll teach you about apologetics, and it'll be an academic apologetic. Now here we're working with people who have their communities have been left by the brains for centuries. They don't work like that. So the apologetic here goes, what is livestock like? Do they want for anything? What are his kids like? Do they work hard? And do they speak Welsh to the elderly? Because that's respect, you see. Yeah. Can you have a laugh with him? That's really important because rural people feeling under real pressure. So can you have a laugh with him? Will he have a banter with you? There's something in the culture here that says you've got to be able to give a good answer. Oh, good answer, Rev. If I take something from somebody and I give them something back, which I do, and you should, uh, good answer, Rev. Now they're going to be much more likely to listen when I tell them about the Lord. And the fourth question is he serious? By which they mean, can you actually talk to him? You know, is he a guy who's had some experience of life? Is he ready to be open and honest about himself, about his own faults and failings and weaknesses? And is he going to talk straight to you? So can you rely on him? If he should say something to you, he's going to say it. And there's your apologetic. It's a different one altogether. So we're trying to build the bridge. We're trying to convey some wisdom into problems if they're shared, but it's going to be biblical wisdom without me necessarily quoting the chapter and the verse number. Yeah. And then at the end of the day, we're going to try and get the goods across the bridge that we've tried to build.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like being a missionary anywhere. You're trying to understand their horizon on the world, and then you're trying to deliver your horizon into that world to merge the horizons. This is Tony Thistleton. Can you tell how old I am? This is, standard old hermeneutics from the past. You've probably been reading Grant Osborne and people like that. But anyway, that's how it kind of works, right? That's how it works out. And if you're interested in people and you're interested in things and you're learning every day, come on. That's how it works, isn't it? Have I answered that question or not?
I think so. Mike does have a follow on. Can you give us an example from the last good conversation you had?
No, I can't give you one from the last good conversation, but I'll give you a good one. Um, oh boy, this is being recorded, isn't it? Oh, hang
Why
on.
don't we do a fictionalized version? Can you make fictionalized that's sort of merged from different things, or
You're not asking much, are you? Um,
sorry, or we can skip it if you don't want to.
no. I just want to. I want to. I'll come back to
That's fine. We'll come back to that one. Tell you what. I'm skipping ahead a bit on my questions, but I think some people will have farming relatives, farmers in the congregation,
Yeah.
things like that. Some of us won't have,
Mm.
and we think, yeah, we know there's farmers in the community, but we don't know how to reach them, what their struggles are, what their needs are. So, for someone who's, farming is something they may have a tractor drive past the church every so often, but they haven't got a lot of experience with what the issues are that farmers are wrestling with, which is different from somebody who lives in the village, but they're working somewhere else. What are the main challenges for evangelizing and discipling farmers? What are they kind of struggling with at the moment?
You haven't got long enough, pal. I tell you. um, it's a community under pressure. Okay. Now, bear in mind, I'm in Wales. So this is a Welsh perspective, right? So it's tied up with all sorts of things. It's tied up with Westminster doesn't understand us as well as all the usual things. Okay. And that's real. I mean, I don't expect you guys to see that. I don't expect you to grasp it. But I have to tell you, this is really a community that feels on very much on the back foot. Okay. Because of history and because of the way things have been done now and all the rest of it. So you got to watch out for that. We used to talk about the problems being certainly 20 years ago. We were talking about the problems being bovine, all the bees, bovine TB, banks, and bureaucracy. Okay, that's changed with so many things that have changed. Rules and regulations are made for agriculture by people who have no understanding whatever, probably less than the people on this call, and they don't get it. And there seems to be an agenda for bashing farmers that's out there. I'm in contact with folks through my work in the markets and stuff, folks who are really getting very radical. There have been farmers' protests, there have been all sorts of things, and I can see why from what I observe and what I see. Been able to say things to some of the more radical guys, which have been good. There have been people along to big farm meetings. You get 2,000 or 3,000 people into a livestock market for a meeting in protest at the latest thing that's come down the tube from Westminster. These are not people who go to riots. They're not the type. Um, and then you see the young farmers there, really concerned about their future. Um, what is their future going to be? So you've got to be able to deal with the frustrations. And if you're not involved in the industry, all I'd say was please maintain your integrity and don't try to sound as if you are, but show interest and say to somebody, "What sort of farming are you doing? What's that about? Teach me. Let me learn." Um, what are the problems? What are the problems farmers are facing now? There's all this stuff in the papers. What's going on? What's happening around here? Um, I think being an interested learner and tell me stuff. That's one thing. The other thing is, when you're in the garage and you see there's a Farmer's Weekly on the shelf or there's a Farmer's Guardian on the shelf, pick it up, buy it, and have a look. That's a great guide. But then again, when you're approaching somebody who is farmers, hey, I was reading this a boys' magazine. I wanted to understand a bit. I read about such and such. Is that right? And see what you've got. Bearing in mind that what's happening behind the eyes may well not be what you're seeing. Farmers are really bad at talking about their emotions. They're really bad about talking, actually. So talking like this out the question, talking shoulder to shoulder as you're doing something, completely different ball game. That works out quite well. So go along to a livestock market and have a look. What's going on here? What's happening there? See how we get on. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And then it's up to you. You got to take it from there to where it needs to go. You're able to teach biblical wisdom. You hear people's problems. You can teach a bit of biblical wisdom. You can try and move that forward a bit. And there are times when I'll be standing in a livestock pen in a market going on, and they know who I am. The regulars know who I am. They know if I'm chatting with somebody, I'm chatting to somebody. They tend to leave me alone and be prepared to be alone so people can chat to you.
Mm.
But I'll be standing in a pen and somebody will share something and say, "Do you want to have a word with the boss about this?" And they'll go, "Yeah, go on in." Or they'll say, "Do you think that's going to make any difference?" "Yeah, yeah." "So I do it now then?" "Okay, well, don't scratch your eyebrows. Don't close your eyes. Don't bow your head. We'll just have a word now." And we're having a word as if I'm chatting to him as well. you know. And we're just being ordinary and normal about praying, and that is an absolute revelation to some people.
Mm.
This is how we relate to the living God, guys. Does it make a difference? I'll tell you one story, give you an example. Somebody came to me and shared a terrible, awful piece of news, something he'd discovered about a dead, very close relative who just died, and it involved a third party. Right? And there were so many ramifications for the business and money and blah, blah. Anyway, without going too into that. And got to the end of this sort of hour-long conversation with a very distressed person. And they got a bit of an idea from a bit of biblical wisdom, hadn't quoted the verses. And as they were getting up to go, I said, I'll have a word with the boss about that if you like. Sorry, if you're offended by the boss, meaning the Lord, we'll talk about hermeneutics, right? But in this context, it works quite well. It's quite a good translation. I'll have a word with the boss about that if you like. And this person said, do you think that's going to do any good? And I said, oh, yeah. I gave him 3 examples from the last week. Prayer, answered. He said, oh, I don't know about that. So I'm driving back home now from where I've been chatting with them, and they'd driven home, but they were going closer by. So they got there. I was driving back, and WhatsApp pinged on my phone, pulled over, and this message said, you will never guess what just happened. So, yes, I think I might. What happened? Fantastic. Tremendous answer to prayer on the way home. So letting people see the reality like that, I think that helps as well to get the message across. But yeah, anything in there of any use to anybody? I don't know.
Lots of helpful stuff. Thanks, Simon. So I'm trying to keep on tabs with all these great questions that are coming
You
in.
give up now. It's not going to work.
Are local churches supporting you? Do farmers connect with the local church? To the extent you're able to talk about it.
I need to be extremely gracious at this point. We've been 20 odd years here, and I would love to have been able to. There's fault on my part, frustration and whatever. I'm sure I've not been as gracious as I should. But getting that support for what you do, which is not going to be self-funding, certainly at this point, it's very difficult. I've just come off half pay again because it wasn't there. So I had to say to the guys, you're going to need to cut it back. So yeah, thanks. We're off it now. That's great. We're back on full whack. But it's that's the way it is. The support is not there. I don't think there's. Come on, it's not glamorous, is it? Rural mission's tough. It's not. It's not for boys. It's for men. This is a man's job, and it's going to be tough, and it's going to be hard on our families, and it's going to be hard on our wives, who, my wife married me sort of fresh out of Oxford and off to Bible college, and I don't know what her ambitions were for me, but I'm sure she hoped I'd be pastoring a very large church by now with a very wealthy congregation and nice, I don't know, Mercedes parked outside. Forget it, it's a grotty old Land Rover. But I'm grateful for it, So you've got to watch out for all those things. The support is not great. That's one of the reasons we're trying to put a set of conferences together, so we're actually giving to the churches. If you wait for churches to give to you, I don't think you're going to get anywhere with that. We give to churches. We try and help with what feeds their process, what helps them to be reaching out to their folks or folks around and about and see what happens. And really, we are praying for the next generation of people who will come, live, die, in the words of George Verwer. That's the invitation of the gospel, isn't it? Come to somewhere tough. We were certainly raised as students in our era, and it's changed, I think, to pray that, God will give you something tough to do for him, It's where the glory happens. So that's where we want to go. And that's what it's like. That's what it's about.
That's great.
It's tough enough.
Yeah, I'm sure many people can sympathize with that. I guess kind of following on from that, David asked who pays the bills, what percentage of your financial support comes from other Christians. So it sounds like 100%, but where is that coming from? Without a kind of accounting sheet.
I'd love to know what folks think about how we should fund rural mission, by which I mean mission. I don't mean maintenance. Forgive me if I don't want to cut across anybody, but if that means established churches, I'm talking about mission. Now, that might mean revitalizing, or it might mean any number of things, but we're talking about mission here. So this is like a missionary endeavor. And I think the models that are in my head are like running a mission.
Mm.
So it works like that. There have been times when it's been very good that my wife has had a job.
Mm.
That's not great. That's not a great position to be in.
Mm.
Um, but yeah, I don't know the answers to these questions. I just have to get on with it.
Mm.
And in His goodness, the Lord provides folks that do stuff. And sometimes we're taught how much we rely on Him.
Mm. That's really helpful, Simon.
I'm not sure it is, but you're being very nice to me.
No, but it's good. We sometimes we've got to step in faith, haven't we? And sometimes we've got to do the hard things as well. Um, but yeah,
Every day,
yeah,
every day.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Um, Rob asks, is there anything to stop us as a church local farming chaplaincy? Or maybe another way to ask this is, if someone said, yes, this is such a big thing in our community, we need to get started. How do you do that? Do we just, like you say, go down to the cattle market and start cracking on, or what would you suggest?
Looking for people of peace. And I know that term has been used in other contexts, which might not entirely gel with my theology, but um, I think we're looking for people of peace. And there have been a number of those for me over time. Um, so, I mean, very famously, I started turning up in the Llandilo livestock market pretty much as soon as we were here, because we'd realized one of the ways into the community, leading way, was going to be agriculture. Most middle-aged men had some sheep or some connection with agriculture or something, although they were doing other jobs. Is in the culture. So, we therefore decided we're going to sell it and buy this land and get farming and all the rest of it, so I could turn up in the livestock market. I could have just turned up anyway. And there was a guy there who was the chairman of the market committee, and I didn't realize that, but he opened doors for me. I wasn't aware of. He was just working quietly, opening doors for me. And then the auctioneer, who was not a good Sunday school boy necessarily, although I think he was made, I think he was sent. I think he was sent. He opened up, was welcoming, and was making reference. Right, boys, today's sale. When you mind your language, the revs here. Just like fantastic. Isn't that brilliant? Fantastic. And then there was a guy who very particularly changed things for me in terms of my approach to people. Who was a guy who said I was taking flack. I was just taking people were sort of joshing me. I think that's the modern expression, isn't it? Mocking, I'd say, really. And I was just taking it, turn the other cheek. It's a biblical principle. And he came to me and said, listen to me, you've got to give them a good answer.
Mm.
What do you mean, give them I can't do that. I got to turn the other cheek. I was frank with him. He was chapel, so I could get somewhere with that. And he said, no, honestly, trust me, you need to do this. Okay. So the next guy came along with a sarky comment. I gave him a cracker back, actually. Was, yeah, good. Bang, hit him. And the boys said, oh, yeah, fantastic, Rev, well done. And now they're listening to me. We can have a laugh. We can have some fun. It's acceptance. So banter is acceptance. But again, this will depend on your culture. And if I'd been on my high horse, if I'd been stuck up, if I'd been whatever, would have killed it dead. So,
Great.
what else you got?
We've got Sam said, what about work and witness amongst non-agricultural folk in rural locations? How's that working where you are, Simon? From what you said just then, most people do have some connection to agriculture.
So there are two particular groups, and then there's the general populace that I
Mm.
work with. One of them, because it's a rural area, is farmers. Everybody knows about that. Tend to work quite a lot with ex-military personnel. There's quite a lot of special operators and people who've done exotic things, did their training or some phase of their training, whatever, local to here. And when they retire, if they've survived and they've come out of all of that and they're back, they tend to want somewhere where they can sort of go and live not too public a life, but is close to things that ring bells for them. Quite a lot of that goes on as well. And then there's the general populace. I am known, funny enough, I walk. Look, I walk. Can you see my shirt? Can you see my shirt? Look at my shirt. Right. I go to a livestock market. I'm not going with a dog collar. I'm going like a rep. Right. I am a rep, and so I got a rep shirt on. So I'm walking around looking like this, and I'm chatting to people because you do. My teenage kids used to hate it because they'd go to the co-op with dad and he'd be there for an hour, in the local co-op. Oh, dad, you're talking all the time, yeah. So yes, general rural dwellers. We do talk about farmers quite a lot because we can. We talk a lot less about ex-military personnel.
Mm.
Um, we talk. Well, I don't talk much about the general populace because you expect a pastor to be talking to the people in the supermarket, don't you? And they want to be talking to him. So is that an answer?
Yeah, no, I think that is.
I think you
Um,
just have to take people as they are, where they're coming from, listen, learn, and be positive. That's all. Sorry, that's not helpful at all. There we
no,
go.
it's
What
good.
else you got?
Um, I've got two little promos here. Peter Rush says, "Can I recommend Farming Christian Link, who visit agricultural shows around the country with a witness stand, always glad of support on show days." So that's interesting. I don't know. Have you come across them, son?
I've heard of them in England.
They've not
It's a
crossed the
it's a
border.
different country, you know. I'm
Oh,
sure they do a great work.
yeah. I'm pretty certain I've seen them at the Cheshire Show. We were very encouraged to see them there. And then Nick has said quite a few counties. So this is North Cumbria. So again, sorry, Simon,
No.
in the evil dark lands of England.
Yes, yes, yes. You're getting the idea. You're getting the idea.
Quite a few counties have a rural chaplaincy network with
Yeah.
individuals, often local pastors, visiting livestock markets. That's interesting. Nick, is there a way to like get in on that action? That'd be kind of interesting to see whether, churches can pick up on that opportunity.
I need to just refer to that in Wales
Mm,
because it does exist. It's all Catene, which is churches together,
mm,
and the theological drift is clear quite often. And often they're guys who used to pastor a church that's closed in our context,
right. Mm, that's helpful.
and they haven't been happy about me at all.
Mm,
I think it's fair to say
mm.
because
So
we got a gospel. Sorry, lads,
a
and
bit
we're
similar to a
engaging
kind
in
of
business.
UCCF staff worker versus a kind of university chaplain, kind of.
Well, some of the university chaplains we had became Christians, which is good. Sorry, I was mischievous. I can't.
No, that's
Yeah.
good.
Uh,
We're on the
it's,
same
it's, an,
page.
it's an important issue here. I think there's an issue, and I don't know if this is more helpful or not.
Mm,
But in terms of resilience, we need to be able to build resilience in this sort of ministry for ourselves, and that comes from obviously from seeing our significance in the cross of Christ and nothing much else. Right,
mm.
that's the first thing, and also having a sense of humor, sometimes a moderately dark sense of humor, if that helps you. Um, so yeah, sorry.
No, that's great. Right, last one. Um, plug time. You've got the conference coming up, Call to the
Yeah.
Hill South. It's at
Yeah.
Union School of Theology, where all the best pastors were trained.
Are you
Uh,
sure?
yeah, definitely, 100%. Apart from
Good stuff.
Jesus, they've all come.
Oh, oh dear. Oh dear.
So what's it all about? Who's it for? Give a
Yeah.
big plug for those who can get down there on the day.
So, I mean, the trouble with me is I'll go to marts, I'll be with people, I'll do the evangelism, and I won't think bigger. And some people on our board, we've got some good people on our board. I think it was Ian Parry actually said, "Look, Si, we need to be running a conference," which I interpreted accurately to mean you got to organise a conference. So I did, and I organised this conference, which was my mind working, and it was in terms of missiologically, what can we add, what can we give, what can we stimulate, and get people together so that we're networking, allowing people to network themselves in this sort of ministry. And we had fairly technical missiological approach to stuff. And the following year, they came back to me and they said, "So, we're not Harvard, we're not Yale, right? How about we did something for just ordinary people in the churches along the southern coastal plain to open their eyes to things that can be done in these settings?" And so that really underlies what we got on the program. We got a guy called Jonathan Thomas. Have you heard of him? You heard of Jonathan, have you? Jonathan pastored in Ammanford down the road, which is a mining community. He pastored in Abergavenny,
Mhm.
for a while there, and he's now a producer with BBC Radio Wales, doing a great job. But he's made a feature film on Welsh awakenings. If you haven't seen that, wherever you're from, it's a really good film to see. It's called Welsh Awakenings. You can Google it, and Jonathan Thomas, and it comes up. Jonathan's going to talk about the strategic importance of rural Wales in spiritual awakening in Wales over the years, and he's doing that as our keynote. And then we're having like work group seminar type things on practical skills that can be leveraged, whether you're living in a rural area or whether you're not, but want to help.
Mm.
And so we're looking at, well, first off, we got Merv and Kim Neal. Do you know Merv Neal? He was missionary in North India, got kicked out or something. And he's been in and out of there, in and out of Bhutan, and in and out of Pakistan, in and out of some very closed places, training pastors. And they're seeing massive church growth. And basically, they've got a really interesting line on what you need to do to train people for ministry if you want them to be planting churches. And he's going to be talking about that in Union, which will be interesting. So he's doing a seminar on that and working through what do we actually need to teach people to get people ready and prepare people for rural mission. Some bloke called Bowkett who's doing something about how you can serve rural Wales in mission without moving house. And then we've got Mark Barnes. You know Mark?
Yeah, yeah. Mark was my
Yeah.
theology lecturer. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Well, he's doing something on how can I serve rural Wales if I move there with limited time.
Mm.
So you look at resources and you look at AI and what you can and can't do with that and all the rest of it. So that'd be interesting. And then in the afternoon, we've got workshops on creating digital content. Jonathan Thomas is going to do that. Obviously, he's a BBC producer, so he's quite useful on that. I'm going to do something on distributing digital content because, I said about needing to keep the drip going in order to change someone's worldview so they've got the concepts, so they're going to understand it when you're going to explain the gospel to them. Yeah. So how do you get your little videos onto somebody's mobile phone? A lot of stunts to pull there, a lot of interesting things to be playing with. So we'll have a little play with that and see what other people are doing. I'm not a subject matter expert, but we're workshopping all this together. And Steph Job, Stefan Job, he's basically running the evangelical movement of Wales at the moment. We're in collaboration with them on this. Our organisation is working on these conferences in the north and in the south. He's going to look at the nuts and bolts of actually getting churches actively to work together to revitalize, I think mainly, or to plant. And he's got some experience in that area from the north. So that's the sort of stuff we're trying to look at, nuts and bolts. And you could do this sort of attitude.
Sounds great.
Come, you can sign up. If you go to the EMW website and put in Hills or Call to the Hills, you should get there.
Brilliant. Thanks,
Sign up.
Sam. That sounds great. And for we do have a few people on here who are from America, so I mean they might make the journey. It's worth visiting Wales.
There's somebody on here from America who reached out to me, or we spoke something on Twitter or LinkedIn or somewhere just the other day. Fantastic. Lovely to see you, brother.
So is it going to be recorded? I know last iteration wasn't it? Behind a kind of.
So, yeah, JT stuff is going to be, so Jonathan Thomas's keynote is going to be recorded.
Mhm.
And we're trying to work out how we're going to, when you've got somebody doing a quick presentation, then everybody's workshopping it together. If anybody got ideas how we can do that, that'd be interesting. There is some talk by some of our board members of having something where people can text in the takeaways from their stuff,
Mhm.
from what they've done in the day. So that could all be put together in a format. But at the moment, work in progress. Some of these things we're going to be doing with people involve bring your laptop, bring your smartphone. Let's do this here now. So
Yeah, let's see how it goes.
yeah, I'd love to say yes to you. I'd love to have it recorded because I think some of these guys have got stuff to say.
Mm. I really
Not
enjoyed
sure that
it.
Bowkett bloke. That Bowkett
Yeah.
bloke's his strange character, but there are others who'll have interesting things to say.
No, it's great. Well, if it does come out, we'll try and pass it on, guys, and
Oh, grateful.
hopefully be
It's
useful.
I'm just grateful we're in touch over the sort of racial divide. It's marvelous.